Okay, let's dive right into it. Today, we're unpacking a source that systematically breaks down the unseen spiritual, environmental, and cosmic forces that, according to the author, completely predetermine human existence. It's a seriously dense philosophical framework, and it attempts to explain the why behind, well, literally every single difference in our individual lives.
So to kick things off, we have to challenge a fundamental assumption that most of us hold pretty dear: the concept of free will. The author's central claim here is that you are not actually the author of your own destiny. No, instead, there's this massive, incredibly complex web of inevitabilities that governs our every move, every thought, and every circumstance. We're going to explore what these unseen forces are, how they supposedly operate, and what, if anything, we can actually do about them.
And the mathematical scale of this theory, it is truly staggering. The source text outlines 18 main factors of inevitability. We're talking things like your family, your diet, even cosmic changes. And those branch out into about 180 subfactors. But when all of these interact and intersect, well, the text calculates that they create roughly 10 to the 15th power, that is 1 quadrillion, unique influences shaping your specific life path at any given moment. That astronomical intersection of forces is exactly why the author says it's basically impossible to find two identical people in all of human history.
All right, moving on to Section 1, Echoes of the Past, Inherited Forces.
Now, according to the text, personality isn't something you inherit from your parents. Actually, it's presented as a karmic trait, carried over from the carrier of your previous life. The source uses some pretty vivid examples here. Like if your previous life form was a wolf, you might have a ferocious personality in this life. Or if it was a cow, you might be someone who's super willing to bear heavy burdens and just work hard. The whole concept is that we carry these traits across time, and our main job in this human lifetime is to refine and shed those animalistic characteristics over multiple lifetimes.
And this quote brilliantly illustrates how the text views physical genetics when combined with ancestral karmic debts. It basically describes genes as an essential, inescapable baseline, one that carries not just physiological traits, but the actual intentions of the Creator and the hidden sins of our ancestors. It's a very literal take on the sins of the father. It suggests that ancestral actions, whether good or bad, create a karmic debt that inevitably shapes the physical and social realities of the descendants today.
Next up is Section 2, Forces of the Universe, Cosmic and Environment. Have you ever noticed how different environments just make you feel fundamentally different? Well, the source explains this through something called Earth Chi. It dictates the spiritual energy of our physical location. The claim is that people living in vibrant, sunlit environments with strong subterranean water flows actually absorb entirely different energetic potential than those stuck in barren or damp areas. Basically, it argues that physical geography directly shapes our human spiritual and physiological vitality.
The text also points to what it calls superscience phenomena. Now, this includes sudden cosmic shifts like solar flares, but also something the author rather wildly terms demonic pranks. These are described as interference from entities in higher dimensions, and they inevitably alter a person's trajectory, usually as a punishment when someone gets a little too arrogant. For example, the text suggests that loudly bragging about your perfect health actually triggers these unseen forces to, almost comically, test or diminish that exact same health. Pretty wild, right?
Let's look at Section 3, the internal compass, beliefs and emotions.
So here's the thing. Even the internal drivers we feel we intimately control are classified in this framework as inevitable forces acting upon us. Our core worldview, it acts as an absolute navigator, strictly dictating our psychological state and our ultimate life path. If you firmly believe money is omnipotent, your life inevitably becomes a frantic rush for wealth. If you believe man can conquer nature, you're destined for a life of constant struggle. But if you believe everything is inevitable, the text argues you will naturally live a much more leisurely, contented life, just going with the flow.
Alongside our beliefs, the author lists these specific 7 emotions and 6 desires as powerful human instincts that blindly drive our daily hustle and bustle. The text notes that our inability to control these instincts leads to ridiculous, wasteful, or just plain exhausting behaviors. Think about buying really expensive clothes just to show off, or speaking super loudly in public just to be noticed. These aren't just passing feelings, they are viewed as compelling forces that will literally pull us off our spiritual path if we leave them unchecked.
And because of that, the text firmly argues that your placement within this hierarchy depends entirely on how effectively you manage those internal compasses of emotion and desire. If you're just blindly reacting to instinct and desire, you're going to remain trapped in the lower rungs of existence. Elevating yourself requires deliberately moving past raw emotion into reason and ultimately into pure spirituality. Okay, moving into Section 4, the veil of reality, surface versus essence.
The author juxtaposes these really common surface phenomena against their hidden essences to prove a point. When you see people bustling on a street, the phenomena is the busy crowd, right? But the hidden essence is the invisible, driving desire to survive. An apple falling is just a surface event. The invisible law of gravity is the actual essence governing it. The text uses this to argue that invisible laws, whether they are physical laws like gravity or spiritual laws like karma, are what truly and inevitably govern the universe, not the busy surface details we usually obsess over.
Finally, Section 5, Finding Freedom, Transcending Destiny. Now, this brings us to a massive philosophical crossroads. If absolutely everything is preordained by 1 quadrillion intersecting factors, from our past lives to the cosmos to our own desires, why not just give up and wait for the end? Well, the text actually provides a super fascinating resolution to this problem of determinism. The author states that by first recognizing and deeply accepting these inevitabilities, we can then exert our subjective initiative. If you remain unaware, you're just a leaf blown by the wind of those quadrillion factors. But through conscious practice and cultivation, the text claims you can readjust your life's coordinates. You can systematically escape the mundane kingdom of necessity and cross over into true freedom.
But transcending the constraints of the universe requires a very specific, step-by-step spiritual evolution. And it doesn't start with some mystical detachment right out of the gate. The lowest baseline goal is simply attaining basic health, wealth, and freedom. Only after you do that can you move to the midterm goal, existing within secular society but remaining mentally detached from all its anxieties. And this ultimately builds toward transcending time and space entirely to achieve a state of perfect human nature. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. The text presents a universe meticulously managed by a quadrillion invisible strings. Even if you don't fully endorse this specific karmic and cosmic framework, how might acknowledging the invisible influences around you, your environment, your inherited traits, your deepest unseen biases, change the way you navigate your daily life today? Because understanding what pushes us might just be the very first step toward actually steering the ship.